Hello and welcome to Starbucks Westhill. One of our partners will be with you soon to take your order.
Okie dokie.
What can I get for you today?
Hi there, can I get 2 flat whites, please?
2 flat whites. Yeah. Anything else?
Yep, can I get a iced grande skinny latte, please?
A nice grande skinny latte.
Yeah.
Why did you
Sorry,
laugh?
somebody just got milk all over themselves.
Ah.
Sorry. Skinny caramel latte.
No, an iced grande skinny latte
Yep.
with sugar-free caramel.
With sugar-free
Latte
caramel. 2
frittata.
flat whites and the ice latte.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's all, thanks.
Amazing. Head to the window.
Cheers. Why was that for me?
Second. There's no way, no chance somebody spilled milk. She was laughing at the iced cafe for whatever the fuck to say.
That's a perfectly normal fucking order, isn't it? They always ask what size, so you tell them grande.
The grande. Sean, my man, where are you taking us today?
We are en route currently to Afford, which is just outside of Aberdeen. We're going to go see the finished product on a flip that we sourced to a client who was Glasgow based. He's only ever been to the property 3 times, and that was pre-refurb, middle of the refurb, and then right at the end. So we completely handled it hands off for him. Picked the keys up from the estate agent, carried out the refurb, organised to get it staged, and then passed the keys on to the estate agency for getting the survey done and the photos for getting it on the market.
Any kind of major challenges throughout the process for getting it refurbed, etc.?
In terms of actual challenges, there wasn't anything as part of the refurb. It was a relatively straightforward refurb. But one thing that did come up whilst we were carrying out the refurb was we found out that the garage wasn't fully owned by the property. So as you'll see from the photos and videos probably later on in this video, the actual garage is attached to the cottage, but 50% of it was owned by another house that wasn't adjoined to it, which technically should have been picked up in the legal process of when it was getting purchased, but the buyer's solicitor obviously missed it as part of the title deed. Now luckily enough, we've managed to negotiate with the person who owns it that then they're happy to sell it for a fee, so that there's no issues with any new potential buyers of the cottage only owning 50% of this garage, because it also means 50% of the driveway, which makes the driveway a pretty unusable area if the owner of the other part of it was to be difficult. It was a little bit of a bummer for the owner, but we've managed to kind of come to an agreement with the other party that we'll be able to buy it should the new buyer of the cottage want to have it.
How long start to finish is this kind of project taking?
So this one, from picking up the keys to completion, was approximately 8 weeks. It was slightly further out of town than we would usually do either, so the logistics of materials and personnel, etc. would have been a little bit more complex, but nothing that wasn't too challenging. It was relatively straightforward in the sense there wasn't any plastering to get done, etc. It was a decoration throughout, flooring, kitchen, bathrooms.
Having done many projects over the years, what's some of the key things that you would advise anybody new starting that maybe doesn't have refurb experience to kind of look out for at viewings?
So some of the key things that people typically miss, especially when you're first starting out on your property journey, are things like wallpaper. And now it's a thing that people overlook because it doesn't look costly, but to get a wall or a flat fully stripped of wallpaper and then replastered, it can add quite a fair amount of cost onto your property refurb.
Yeah.
Other things such as the age of the boiler can be another thing that can add a good bit of a good bit of cost. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you're typically looking for something that isn't too old and is a combi boiler typically. If it's anything sort of 10 plus years old, you could start to be entering parts issues and the labour costs. They start mounting up. So I would certainly be looking out for things like older boilers. Consumer units are another thing that they're not too costly, but again can add quite a bit of cost to your budget if you miss them. Windows is another thing that people tend to miss. Sometimes we still see single glazed windows, or the mechanisms are blown, or the panes of glass have blown, which can be, the panes being blown can be missed. Typically what you're looking for is condensation in between the 2 panes.
Yeah.
So you want to be looking for things like that when you're doing viewings.
And see, going back to like the wallpaper stripping and potentially replastering, that's definitely something that it's an easy thing to miss, right? But like, let's take, for example, a 1-bedroom flat, wallpaper everywhere to be stripped and replastered throughout. What's kind of typical cost would you find for, say, like a 43 square metre one bedroom flat to do that? How much? What's the cost increase of having to do that?
So to break it into two sections for like so the wallpaper strip and then the plaster as a separate thing.
Yeah.
If the paper is of the wood chip type, that's where it can become really costly, because a lot of people will not give you a fixed price for removing it because it can be such a variable in time for actually stripping it off.
Yeah.
I've seen costs as much as 1,200 quid just to strip a one bedroom flat of wallpaper, and then when you add on the plastering element, depending on how bad the actual walls are after the wallpaper was off, you can be anything between 1,700 to 2,250 pounds in a plastering cost. So right there, if you couple them two things together, you could be almost at 3,500 pounds.
So it's a fair chunk on maybe a 15 grand budget you'd allowed for a one bedroom flat.
100%.
It can be the biggest difference as well in terms of, like, if you've priced up for, say, a new kitchen and a new bathroom and a redecoration, and you've not allowed for that wallpaper stripping, not doing the wallpaper stripping and replastering, it kind of takes the shine off of the new kitchen and bathroom, would you say?
It most definitely does, and especially when you're putting in new kitchens and bathrooms, you tend to disturb the wallpaper, and you never really get a good finish when you're trying to tape fill new areas and then you've got wallpaper in other parts. It doesn't look great, and especially in a surveyor's eyes when they're going out to value the property, or any sort of potential person that's looking to rent the property. It just takes off that new element that people expect when they're going into a newly refurbished property. If you've missed things like wallpaper, they typically stain as well. So like I've seen in lots of properties that wallpaper's nicotine stained. Even when you've painted over it, which I've seen multiple times, it does come back through, because you can't really put any sort of stain blocker on wallpaper.
Yeah, for sure. What you finding works really well for kind of flips at the minute in terms of like finishes and spec levels? Is it quite similar to buy-to-lets at the minute, or is there a wee bit more input?
So typically my advice for any sort of buy to flip would be to add that little bit of extra pizzazz to the property. So things like adding tiles in the bathroom, tiled splashbacks in the kitchen, potentially something like media walls, acoustic paneling. Those are the sort of extra finishing touches that really stand out in photos and in any sort of person that's viewing the property to potentially buy, because it's that one less thing for them to have to do when they move in. If it looks really nice, the value is going to be a little bit higher than it would be if you just say put aqua panel in or didn't do any sort of finer details like acoustic paneling or media walls.
Yeah, is there much cost difference you're finding between doing those little pizzazz?
Yeah, so I mean, the cost of a tiler to do like a bathroom could be anything between, depending on the type of style of tiles that you go for, size of the tiles that you go for, or if you decide to go for something like a herringbone tile, they can be more costly. But the average that we sort of see for a normal size bathroom would be anything between sort of 750 to 1,200 pounds for labour for the tiling, and then depending again on the tile size and type that you get, you could be anything between 500 to 700 pounds for the tiles. Yes. Whereas for like an aqua panel, you're typically between 90 and 120 pounds per panel, plus obviously install costs.
Whoa. Here we are. First time I've ever seen this place. As I mentioned in the car, sourced on the open market, refurbished, fully hands-off for investor. Only been up, guy from Glasgow 3 times to see before, during and after the refurb. So we'll have a wee look round, show you guys kind of the finished article, I guess. There's some obviously waste and stuff to deal with, but yeah, has there been anything done externally, Sean?
Just this cladding here and then the outside of the garage painted.
Yeah.
Cool. Just to tidy up. So as we were mentioning, this is the side that turned out that the property was owned, and this is the side that turned out that wasn't actually owned by the property, which is mental.
Aye, okay.
But yeah.
Did that even mean
so
that this half the driveway,
the driveway as well?
Hold on. So you couldn't even park in there?
You couldn't, technically you couldn't, no.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You alright?
Yeah, I just did shit.
Back's behind my seat, mate.
We'll get you mic'd up before you go in. So here we are in the buy to flip project. I'll give you a wee look around to go through the numbers and how this kind of project came about. So in here in the living room, this property was actually on the open market for £160,000, advertised at that. We were able to negotiate and secure this for 120k, so a good 40 grand of a discount. We've then since spent 30k on the refurb, which was bang on budget, and we spent about 7 to 8 weeks on this refurb. Overall, we've just had this property revalued with a home report of £200,000. That's looking like a good chunk of profit for this investor. So in terms of how we've actually monetized this property, so we've not actually purchased it and we've not risked any capital on this one. We've sourced this, like I mentioned earlier, and made £4,000 of a fee. Now we actually found someone else to find a buyer for us, so we've actually split that fee 50-50. So a 2k sourcing fee is what we've made here. But we then went on and project managed the refurb, which we've charged a fee of £3,600 based on the total kind of refurb budget and a 12% fee that we charge. There's no risk for us because we're not putting any money into the deal, and it's purely just trading time and organising things in terms of the fee for the deal, negotiations and etc. over to the solicitor, and obviously managing the trades and ordering materials for the refurbs. It's a really magic strategy for getting involved in property if you don't have capital, where you can get 4k of fees potentially, or even 2k if you're co-sourcing. Plus, if you have the ability to and want to deliver projects and manage refurbs, there's also that additional kind of revenue stream. So overall from this project, we've made total amount of fees of £5,600. So that's pretty good in terms of what you actually get in terms of purely kind of trading your time and service for that money, rather than actually buying it, having to pay finance on it, having to pay the holding costs for getting the flip done, and also having that risk associated with it, which also is a great strategy. The investor's going to walk away with a good chunk of cash when they sell this place, but also we've made a good amount of fees in it. So it's a win-win for everyone.
As James mentioned, we spent £30,000 on the refurb in this property. Let me take you around and show you exactly where the budget was spent. As you'll see in the living room here and throughout the property, we laid LVT flooring. This is a slightly more expensive flooring, albeit is laid with herringbone as well. The herringbone effect takes a little bit more time to fit for the joiner, so it does add a little bit more cost, and it keeps the property nice and light and bright with its colours and the tones of the paintwork. You'll see here that we've also added acoustic panelling. This is quite a low cost item, but it has quite a high impact for photos, and it just gives it a more aesthetic feel for people coming in to view the property, and it's a great space to hang a TV. So in here we fitted a Howden's kitchen, which is with all integrated appliances. The tones and the colour scheme that we picked for this was to suit the walls and the flooring. So it's a really nice aesthetical finish for this property. We decided to go tiled in this bathroom. The difference between a buy-to-let and a buy-to-flip is we'll typically spend a little bit more on areas like the bathroom and the kitchen, like you've just seen. If it was a buy-to-let, we would have probably only fitted aqua panel, whereas in this case here we've fitted tiles on the floor, around the shower area and behind the sink, etc. So as you'll see in this bedroom here, we've kept it nice and light and bright again. The main changes in here were we changed the wardrobe doors, and we also removed a tank that was previously in this cupboard here. It took up some space that wasn't really necessary to do so, so what we did is we moved the tank up into the loft, and we also changed it from unvented to vented, which then meant rather than having an electric shower in the bathroom, we were able to fit a mixer shower. And because we were putting in tiles, it was going to be a much better finish. This bedroom here is the smaller of the two, as you'll have seen. There wasn't very much to get done in here other than a light decoration, new carpets, and again, a new door. So this property also comes with a decent sized garden. There wasn't much work to get done there. It was basically just a nice tidy up of the garden area so that when the photos were taken for putting it on the market, it looked a lot more appealing.
You'll have seen from the walkthrough that this is all staged. Part of the packages that we offer, it's not just the sourcing, the project management. We also make introductions to a staging company. The client for this property has paid, I think, £1,600, and that's for 6 weeks worth of staging with all the furniture. It makes a massive difference when it comes to the photographs and selling the property. Not every single person that comes to view your property is going to be able to visualize themselves living here in the furniture that they can have. So this is a massive part of the selling in order to give them that. So a lot of the furniture that you see in this property is typical of what we would stage a serviced accommodation as, and if you were looking to do that yourselves, the cost would be around about £7,000 to £8,000 for absolutely everything. That's your beds, your sofas, everything to do with the kitchen, utensils, dining table, chairs. It's a really nice sized property for a serviced accommodation.